New York City, a place teeming with life, dreams, and ambitions, found itself gripped by an unspeakable terror in the early 1970s. A predator, lurking in the shadows, preyed on the city's most vulnerable, its children. This wasn't just a story of a killer on the loose, it was a chilling descent into the darkest corners of the human psyche. The city that never sleeps was about to face a nightmare. The case, forever etched in the annals of criminal history as the Charlie Chopoff murders, sent shockwaves through the city and beyond. The very name, whispered in hushed tones, evoked a primal fear, a stark reminder of the vulnerability of innocence in the face of pure evil. The crimes themselves were as brutal as they were baffling, leaving law enforcement grappling for answers in a city shrouded in fear. The year was 1972. New York City was already reeling from the aftermath of the Son of Sam killings, a reign of terror that had kept the city on edge. Just when it seemed like the city could breathe again, a new wave of fear began to spread. The first victim, an 8-year-old boy, was found brutally murdered, his body bearing horrific mutilations that defied comprehension. The city was in shock. Who could commit such an act? The news spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of fear and speculation. Parents clutched their children a little tighter, fear becoming a constant companion. The city, once a symbol of hope and opportunity, now seemed like a hunting ground for a monster. The hunt was on for Charlie Chopoff, a name that would forever be synonymous with terror in the streets of New York. The crimes of Charlie Chopoff were as shocking as they were baffling. The first victim, 8-year-old Douglas Owens, was found in an abandoned building in Harlem, his body bearing the gruesome signature that would give the killer his chilling moniker. The young boy had been brutally attacked, his genitals severed in a horrific act of violence that defied explanation. The city was in an uproar. Fear and outrage gripped the community as news of the heinous crime spread. The police, already stretched thin by the city's escalating crime rate, found themselves facing a case that seemed ripped from the pages of a horror novel. The pressure mounted as they launched a desperate search for the perpetrator, determined to bring the monster to justice. Weeks later, another victim, a 9-year-old boy named Luis Ortiz, was found murdered in similar circumstances. The modus operandi was the same. The brutality, the chilling mutilation, all pointed towards the same perpetrator. The city was in the grip of a serial predator, and the body count was rising. Panic set in, fueled by the realization that a monster walked among them. As the investigation intensified, a pattern began to emerge. The victims were all young boys, primarily of African American or Hispanic descent, living in impoverished neighborhoods. They were often lured away with promises of treats or toys, their innocence making them easy prey for the predator. The killer, it seemed, moved within the shadows of the city, preying on the most vulnerable, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. The investigation into the Charlie Chopoff murders was a desperate race against time. The NYPD, under immense pressure to apprehend the culprit, found themselves navigating a labyrinth of dead ends and false leads. The city, gripped by fear, demanded answers, and the lack of a suspect only fueled the growing sense of panic. The investigation was complex, hampered by the limited forensic technology of the time and the lack of eyewitnesses. Detectives worked tirelessly, interviewing potential witnesses, canvassing neighborhoods, and chasing down every lead, no matter how insignificant it seemed. The investigation led them deep into the city's underbelly, a world of petty criminals, informants, and whispers in the dark. The pressure was immense, every passing day bringing with it the fear of another child falling prey to the elusive killer. Amidst the chaos, a break in the case came from an unexpected source. A resident of Harlem, claiming to have witnessed a man acting suspiciously around the time of the second murder, came forward. The witness, though hesitant at first, provided a description of the man, describing him as a Hispanic male in his late 20s or early 30s with a distinctive limp. This vital clue breathed new life into the investigation, giving the detectives a much-needed lead to pursue. The description, circulated among the city's police precincts, soon yielded a potential match. Erno Soto, a 32-year-old Puerto Rican man with a history of mental illness and a previous conviction for assault, became a person of interest. Soto, who lived in a boarding house in the Bronx, had been previously treated at the Manhattan State Hospital for schizophrenia. His history of violence, coupled with his proximity to the crime scenes, made him a prime suspect. Erno Soto, a man shrouded in mystery, became inextricably linked to the Charlie Chopoff case. Born and raised in the slums of East Harlem, Soto's life had been marked by hardship and instability. His childhood was marred by poverty and neglect, and he had spent a significant portion of his adolescence in and out of foster homes. His troubled upbringing, coupled with his emerging mental health issues, painted a picture of a deeply troubled individual. As a young man, Soto's brushes with the law began to escalate. Petty thefts turned into assaults, and his violent outbursts became more frequent and unpredictable. His mental health, deteriorating with each passing year, became a recurring theme in his interactions with law enforcement. The system, ill-equipped to deal with the complexities of mental illness, often shuffled him between jail cells and psychiatric wards, a vicious cycle that did little to address his underlying issues. In 1969, Soto was arrested for a particularly brutal assault on a subway platform. The victim, a young woman, had been beaten unconscious and left for dead. Soto, deemed unfit to stand trial due to his mental state, was committed to the Manhattan State Hospital, a sprawling psychiatric facility on Ward's Island. His time at the institution was marked by periods of relative calm, punctuated by violent outbursts and erratic behavior. He was, by all accounts, a deeply troubled individual, lost in the labyrinth of his own mind. The investigation into the Charlie Chopoff murders brought Soto back into the spotlight. His history of violence against children, combined with his proximity to the crime scenes, made him a prime suspect. Detectives, eager to close the case and bring an end to the city's nightmare, zeroed in on Soto. However, the case against him was far from airtight. His mental state, a recurring theme throughout his life, would become a central point of contention in the investigation. The emergence of Erno Soto as a prime suspect in the Charlie Chopoff murders presented a unique challenge for the Manhattan State Hospital. The institution, already grappling with the stigma surrounding mental illness, found itself at the center of a media frenzy. The public, hungry for answers, demanded to know how a man with Soto's history of violence was allowed to walk the streets. The hospital, bound by patient confidentiality and ethical considerations, found itself walking a tightrope between cooperating with the investigation and protecting the rights of its patients. The hospital staff, thrust into the spotlight, faced intense scrutiny. They were questioned about Soto's behavior during his time at the institution, his treatment plan, and whether he posed a danger to the public. The case ignited a debate about the responsibility of mental health professionals in identifying and managing potentially dangerous individuals. The ethical dilemma was profound. How do you balance patient confidentiality with public safety, particularly when dealing with individuals suffering from severe mental illness? Adding to the complexity was the fact that Soto himself was never deemed competent to stand trial. His mental state, characterized by delusions and hallucinations, made it difficult to determine whether he understood the charges against him or could assist in his own defense. This presented a legal quagmire, as the justice system struggled to reconcile the concepts of criminal responsibility and mental illness. The case highlighted the limitations of a system grappling with the complexities of mental health within a legal framework. The Manhattan State Hospital, caught in the crosshairs of the investigation, found itself at the center of a larger societal debate. The case brought to light the challenges of treating and managing individuals with severe mental illness, particularly those who posed a potential danger to themselves or others. The case sparked a conversation about the need for improved mental health services, increased funding for psychiatric facilities, and a more nuanced understanding of the intersection between mental illness and criminal behavior. The case of Charlie Chopoff, though fading into the annals of criminal history, continues to cast a long shadow. The investigation, marked by dead ends and lingering questions, never definitively linked Erno Soto to the murders. Despite the circumstantial evidence and the cloud of suspicion that hung over him, Soto was never formally charged with the crimes. The lack of concrete evidence, coupled with his precarious mental state, made it impossible to build a solid case against him. While the specter of Charlie Chopoff may have receded from the headlines, the case left an indelible mark on the city and its inhabitants. The fear that gripped the city during those dark days lingered long after the murders ceased. Parents remained wary, children were kept close, and the city that never sleeps seemed to hold its breath, haunted by the specter of the unsolved crimes. The case also had a profound impact on the field of criminal profiling. The investigation, hampered by limited forensic technology and the lack of a clear motive, highlighted the need for more sophisticated methods of analyzing crime scenes and understanding criminal behavior. The case underscored the importance of forensic psychology in criminal investigations, particularly in cases involving offenders with suspected mental health issues. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Charlie Chopoff case is the ongoing debate it sparked about the intersection of mental health and criminal justice. The case exposed the limitations of a system grappling with the complexities of mental illness and the challenges of balancing public safety with the rights of individuals suffering from mental health issues. The case served as a stark reminder of the need for increased funding for mental health services, improved training for law enforcement and judicial officials, and a more compassionate and nuanced approach to dealing with individuals living with mental illness. Subscribe for more tales from the dark side of history.